3 months after the gala, Daniel sat in what used to be his living room, now converted into the foundation's main office. Papers covered the desk in front of him, applications from caregivers all over the country asking for help. Each one told a story similar to Rose's, people who'd given everything and had nothing left. People who'd been forgotten by the families they'd served. Rosa walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. She'd gained a little weight in the past few months, looked healthier, less exhausted. The lines around her eyes were still there, but they seemed softer somehow. She was smiling more. "You're working too late again," she said, setting a cup in front of him. "Says the woman who's also here at 8 o'clock at night. I'm old. I don't need much sleep." "You're young. You should be out enjoying life, maybe meeting someone new." Daniel laughed. "I'm fine, Rosa, really. I'm happier now than I've been in years." It was true. The divorce from Rebecca had been quick and brutal. She'd tried to fight the prenup, but her lawyers had told her it was ironclad. She'd moved back to New York, where her family was, and Daniel heard she was already dating someone new, some investment banker who didn't seem to mind her reputation. The story of the gala had gone viral in ways Daniel never expected. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded with opinions. Some people praised Daniel for standing up for Rosa. Others criticized him for humiliating his wife publicly. But the conversation started something bigger. People began sharing their own stories about caregivers who'd impacted their lives. Nannies who'd raised them. Housekeepers who'd been like family. Drivers who'd been there for every important moment. And they started asking the same questions Daniel had asked himself. Where are these people now? Did we treat them right? Do we owe them more? The foundation received thousands of applications in the first month alone. Daniel had to hire a full staff to handle them all. Rosa interviewed potential directors, people who could help run different branches. They focused on 3 main areas: direct financial support for caregivers in need, education funding for children being raised by grandparents or other relatives, and advocacy for better wages and treatment of domestic workers. Isabella and Sophia had moved into the renovated apartment with Rosa. Daniel visited them 3 or 4 times a week, more than he'd ever visited his own parents. The apartment was beautiful now, nothing like the rundown place they'd lived before. 3 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a safe building with a doorman and a playground. The girls were thriving. Isabella had joined the science club and was talking about medical school like it was a real possibility now. Sophia had enrolled in an art program at a local community center and filled their apartment with paintings. They still missed their mother, still had nightmares sometimes, but they were healing. Rosa's love and the stability Daniel had provided were making all the difference. One evening, Daniel took them all to dinner at a nice restaurant. Not fancy, just nice, a family place where the girls could be kids without worrying about perfect manners. Sophia ordered spaghetti and got sauce all over her face. Isabella talked non-stop about a field trip to a science museum. Rosa just watched them, smiling, her eyes bright. "Thank you," she said to Daniel when the girls were distracted by dessert. "You don't have to keep thanking me." "Yes, I do. You gave us our lives back. We were drowning, Danny. I was so scared all the time. Scared I couldn't provide for them. Scared something would happen to me and they'd end up in foster care. Scared they'd grow up thinking this was all life had to offer. You would have found a way. You always do. Maybe, but this is better. They get to be children now. They get to dream big and believe those dreams can come true. That's a gift." Daniel watched the girls arguing playfully over who got the last piece of cake. "They remind me of me at that age. Full of energy and questions and hope. You were a wonderful child. Curious about everything. Kind to everyone. I miss those days sometimes. We can't go back, but we can do this. We can help other kids have what I had. What they have now." Rosa reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You're going to change so many lives." The foundation grew quickly. Daniel hired publicists and fundraisers, people who knew how to work the charity circuit. But he insisted on keeping the focus real. No more fancy galas where rich people congratulated themselves for writing checks. Instead, they held events where caregivers could tell their own stories, where the people they helped could speak directly. They created a program where former nannies could mentor current ones, sharing advice and support. They started a hotline for domestic workers who were being mistreated or exploited. They lobbied for better labor laws and protections, and the money kept coming in. Not just from the wealthy, but from ordinary people who'd been moved by Rosa's story. $5 donations, $20 donations, whatever people could afford. It all added up. Daniel's parents became regular donors and volunteers. His mother worked in the office 2 days a week, answering phones and processing applications. She'd changed after the gala. She was quieter, more thoughtful. She'd apologized to Rosa a dozen times, and Rosa had forgiven her every time. One afternoon, Daniel's mother asked to speak with him privately. They sat in his office, and she looked nervous. "I've been thinking a lot about the past," she said. "About how I raised you, or didn't raise you, really." Rosa did that. "Mom, no, let me say this. I was a terrible mother. I prioritized everything else. My social life, my charity work, my image. But never you. Never the actual child I'd brought into the world. You did your best. That's a kind lie, and we both know it. Rosa did her best. I did the minimum. And I've realized something. All those charity galas I attended, all that money I raised for various causes, it was all performative. I never actually cared about helping people. I cared about being seen helping people." Daniel didn't know what to say. This was the most honest his mother had ever been with him. "Working here, seeing what you've built, talking to the caregivers who come through that door, it's changed me," she continued. "I'm trying to be better, to actually care, not just pretend to care. That means a lot, Mom. Does it? Can you actually forgive me?" Daniel thought about that. Could he forgive his mother for years of neglect? For hiring Rosa to do the job she should have done herself? For dismissing Rosa without a second thought when she was no longer needed? "I'm trying," he said honestly. "It's not easy, but I see you trying too, and that helps." His mother's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. Or Rosa's, but I'm grateful for it anyway." After she left, Daniel sat thinking about forgiveness, about how Rosa had forgiven his family so easily, how the girls had forgiven their father, even though he'd abandoned them, how he was learning to forgive his parents, slowly, day by day. Maybe that was part of what Rosa had taught him all those years ago. That holding on to anger hurt you more than it hurt anyone else. That people made mistakes and sometimes they deserved second chances. Not Rebecca, though. Some things were unforgivable. The cruelty she'd shown, the contempt in her voice when she spoke about Rosa, that came from deep inside her character. She hadn't been having a bad day. She'd been showing who she really was. Daniel didn't miss her. He didn't miss the marriage or the lifestyle or any of it. What he'd thought was happiness had been just emptiness dressed up in expensive clothes. 6 months after the gala, the foundation held its first graduation ceremony. 20 caregivers had completed a training program that would help them advocate for better conditions and pay. They'd learned about labor laws, contract negotiations, and their rights as workers. And they'd learned they weren't alone. Rosa gave a speech that brought everyone to tears. She talked about her own journey, about the years of struggle, about nearly giving up, and about how Daniel's intervention had saved not just her life but her granddaughter's futures. "But this isn't about one person's kindness," Rosa said. "This is about a system that needs to change. Caregivers, domestic workers, all the people who keep households running and children safe, we deserve dignity. We deserve fair wages. We deserve to be seen as the professionals we are." The audience applauded. Daniel watched from the side, proud of how far Rosa had come in just a few months. She'd been so timid that first night, so uncertain. Now she spoke with confidence and passion. She'd found her voice. After the ceremony, a woman approached Daniel. She was in her 50s, wearing a simple dress, and she looked nervous. "Mr. Daniel, I'm Carmen. I worked for your family too after Rosa left. I was your housekeeper for 10 years. Daniel remembered her vaguely. A quiet woman who'd cleaned the house and cooked meals. He'd barely spoken to her, he realized with shame. She'd been there in his home for 10 years and he'd never really seen her. "Carmen, I'm sorry. I should have recognized you." "It's okay. I was invisible. Most of us are. But I wanted to thank you for what you're doing. My daughter needs surgery, and your foundation is helping with the medical bills. You've saved us. I'm glad we could help. It's more than that. You've made people pay attention, to notice us, to understand that we matter. That's the real gift." After she left, Daniel thought about what she'd said, about being invisible, how many people move through the world unseen by those they served. How many cleaned houses and raised children and cooked meals without anyone learning their names or caring about their struggles. The foundation couldn't help everyone, The problems were too big, too systemic, but they could help some. And maybe, slowly, they could change attitudes. Make people think differently about the workers they depended on. That night, Daniel had dinner with Rosa and the girls again. It had become a Sunday tradition. They'd cook together in Rosa's new kitchen, the girls helping and making a mess and laughing. It felt like family in a way Daniel's actual family never had. Isabella got an A on her science test, Rosa announced proudly. That's wonderful, Daniel said. What was it about? Isabella launched into an explanation about genetics and DNA that went mostly over Daniel's head. But he listened intently, asking questions, showing her he cared. This was what parents were supposed to do, he thought. Pay attention, show interest, be present. Sophia showed him her latest painting. It was of their old apartment and their new one side by side. In the old apartment, the colors were dark and sad. In the new one, everything was bright and cheerful. It's about before and after, Sophia explained. Before you helped us and after. It's beautiful. You're really talented. Rosa says I can go to art school someday if I want. You can do anything you want. Both of you can. Later, after the girls went to bed, Daniel and Rosa sat on the balcony of her apartment. The night was warm, the city lights spreading out below them. Do you ever regret it? Rosa asked. Giving up your marriage, your old life, all of it? Never. Not even for a second. You were rich and successful before. You still are, I suppose, but your life is so different now. Better. My life is better now. How do you know? Maybe in a few years you'll wish you'd stayed with Rebecca, made it work somehow. Daniel shook his head. Rebecca and I were never going to work. We didn't share the same values. She saw people as props in her perfect life. I don't want to live like that. What do you want? It was a simple question, but Daniel had to think about it. What did he want? He'd spent so much of his life chasing success, building his company, making money. But that wasn't what made him happy. This, he said finally. I want to help people. I want to make a real difference in actual lives. I want to come to your apartment on Sundays and eat dinner with you and the girls. I want to know that when I go to bed at night, I've done something that matters. Rosa smiled. You sound like me. That's all I ever wanted too. Rebecca loved parties. She loved planning them, hosting them, being photographed at them. So when Daniel suggested they throw a charity gala at their home, she lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. What's the cause? She asked immediately, already mentally designing her dress. Education for underprivileged children, Daniel said. Specifically supporting the caregivers who dedicate their lives to raising kids. Nannies, foster parents, grandparents who step up when parents can't. Rebecca was already on her phone, scrolling through event planners. Perfect, that's very trendy right now. Everyone will want to come. We can get it in the society pages for sure. Daniel watched her, feeling nothing. A month ago, her enthusiasm would have made him smile. Now it just confirmed what he already knew. She cared about appearances, not actual change. She wanted the photo opportunities, not to actually help anyone. I'm thinking we invite about 200 people, he said. Business leaders, tech executives, old family friends. My parents and siblings too. Absolutely. And we should have a speaker, someone who can tell a touching story. Maybe we can find a former nanny who went on to do something impressive. That would be inspiring. I have someone in mind. Great, just make sure they clean up well. We don't want anyone looking too shabby in the photos. Daniel clenched his jaw and said nothing. Over the next 3 weeks, the preparations consumed the house. Rebecca hired the best caterers, the most exclusive florists, a famous string quartet. She had the house deep cleaned until it sparkled. She bought a custom designer gown that cost more than Rosa made in 6 months. Daniel went along with all of it, signing the checks, approving the decisions. But secretly, he was planning something else entirely, something Rebecca knew nothing about. He met with his lawyer and accountant multiple times, setting up the legal structures for what he wanted to do. He met with his real estate agent, finalizing a purchase. He met with the director of Isabella and Sophia's school, making arrangements. And he met with Rosa. Danny, I don't understand, she said when he tried to explain. They were sitting at her kitchen table, the girls at school. Why do you want me at this party? Because you're the reason I'm throwing it. This whole thing is about honoring people like you, Rosa. People who give everything to raise children who aren't even their own. Rosa shook her head. I don't belong at a fancy party in Beverly Hills. I wouldn't know what to say or do, and I don't have anything proper to wear. I've taken care of that. Please, Rosa, just trust me. This is important. She looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel saw she knew something was going on. Something bigger than just a party. "You're up to something, little Danny," he smiled. "Maybe. Will you come?" "The girls are invited too. I've arranged for a sitter to be with them during the event, someone wonderful who'll take care of them." "They'll be safe." Rosa sighed, but she was smiling too. "You're stubborn. You always were. Even as a little boy, once you decided something, there was no changing your mind. I learned from the best." The night of the gala, Daniel stood in his bedroom adjusting his tie. Through the window, he could see the valet's parking cars, the first guests arriving. The house glowed with thousands of lights. The garden had been transformed into something magical. Rebecca appeared in the doorway in her custom gown, looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. "How do I look?" "Beautiful," Daniel said honestly. She was beautiful. That had never been the problem. "Is the speaker here yet? The nanny or whoever?" "She'll be here soon." "Good. I want to meet her beforehand, make sure she knows to keep her story uplifting. We don't want people getting too depressed." "This is supposed to be fun." Daniel turned to look at his wife. "Rebecca, do you even know what this charity is about? Have you listened to anything I've said about why we're doing this?" She blinked, surprised by his tone. "Of course, it's about education, supporting caregivers. I heard you, but do you understand? Do you care?" "Daniel, what's wrong with you?" "Guests are arriving. This isn't the time for whatever crisis you're having." "You're right. Let's go downstairs." The party was everything Rebecca had dreamed of. The house filled with wealthy, important people. Champagne flowed. The string quartet played. Everyone complimented the food, the flowers, the ambiance. Rebecca glowed, working the room, making sure she was photographed with all the right people. Daniel moved through the crowd, shaking hands, making small talk. His parents arrived with his sister and brother. They hugged him, told him how proud they were of his success, how beautiful the house looked. "This is quite the event," his mother said. "Very impressive, Daniel. Your father and I are so happy to support your charitable work." Daniel looked at his mother, this elegant woman in her designer dress and expensive jewelry, the woman who'd spent his childhood at charity galas just like this one, raising money for causes she never actually engaged with, the woman who'd hired Rosa to raise her son because she was too busy with her social life. "Thank you for coming," he said evenly. "It means a lot to have the whole family here." At 8 o'clock, Daniel stepped up to the microphone set up on the grand staircase. The room quieted. All eyes turned to him. Rebecca stood at the front, smiling confidently. His parents stood beside her. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Daniel began. "You're here because you believe in supporting the people who dedicate their lives to raising children. Caregivers who give everything, often for very little recognition or reward." Heads nodded. People smiled. This was the kind of cause they could all support. "I want to tell you about someone specific, someone who shaped my entire life. Her name is Rosa Martinez, and she was my nanny from the time I was 2 until I was 17. A screen lowered behind him, and photos began to appear. Young Rosa holding toddler Daniel. Rosa helping him with homework. Rosa at his elementary school graduation, beaming with pride while his parents checked their phones in the background. Daniel told stories. How Rosa had learned English by reading his school books with him. How she'd worked double shifts to save money for his birthday presents. How she'd been there for every nightmare, every scraped knee, every disappointment. How she'd taught him about kindness and compassion and treating all people with dignity. The room was completely silent now. People watched the photos, listened to the stories. Some looked moved. Others looked uncomfortable, maybe thinking about their own nannies, their own help, wondering if they'd treated them well. 3 weeks ago, Daniel continued, his voice hardening slightly, Rosa came to my home. She'd seen my picture in a magazine and wanted to see if I was doing well. She asked for nothing. She just wanted to check on the boy she'd raised. He paused, letting that sink in, and my wife had security escort her out. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Rebecca's face went pale. She looked around, seeing everyone staring at her, and tried to smile like this was a joke. But Daniel's face was dead serious. Rosa didn't come to my home looking for money or favors. She came because she'd loved me like her own son, and she wanted to know I was happy, and she was treated like a trespasser, like she was nothing. The photos on the screen changed. Now they showed Rosa's current life. The rundown apartment building, her working at the grocery store, the duct-taped kitchen table, Isabella and Sophia in their worn-out clothes. While we've been drinking champagne tonight, Rosa has been raising two granddaughters on minimum wage and Social Security. She's 73 years old and works evening shifts at a grocery store just to keep food on the table. She sleeps on a couch so her grandchildren can have a bedroom. She chose between her own medicine and school supplies for the girls. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. Rosa gave me everything when I was young. She gave me love, stability, guidance. She made me who I am. And when she needed help, when life had beaten her down, I wasn't there. None of us were there. He looked at his parents. His mother was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. His father stared at the photos, his face ashen. Rosa worked for my family for 15 years. When she left, she got 2 weeks' pay and a thank you card. No pension, no retirement fund. No acknowledgement of all she'd sacrificed. We used her up and threw her away. Rebecca tried to move toward the door, but the crowd was too thick. People stepped aside, but slowly, making her edge past them. Daniel saw the looks they were giving her. Judgment. Disgust. Tonight, I'm announcing the Rosa Martinez Foundation, Daniel said, dedicated to supporting caregivers, domestic workers, and the children they raise, and I'm making the first contribution of $5 million. Applause erupted, but Daniel held up his hand. There's more. Rosa, could you please come up here? A door opened at the side of the room, and Rosa appeared. She'd been waiting there, listening to everything. Daniel had arranged for a stylist to help her earlier, and she wore an elegant dress that made her look regal. Her hair was professionally done. She looked like the queen she'd always been to him, finally given the recognition she deserved. Isabella and Sophia walked beside their grandmother, wearing beautiful new dresses. They looked scared and confused, overwhelmed by all the people and attention, but Rosa held their hands firmly, walking with dignity toward the staircase. The crowd parted. Some people were crying now. Others looked ashamed. All of them watched as this elderly woman and two little girls climbed the stairs to stand beside Daniel. Rosa, Daniel said, his voice shaking, you gave me 15 years of love. You taught me everything that matters. I can never truly repay that, but I can start tonight. He pulled out an envelope. The apartment building next to yours. I've purchased it. You and the girls will have a 3-bedroom unit, fully renovated, rent-free for as long as you want it. Rosa's hand flew to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Isabella and Sophia, Daniel continued, kneeling down to their level. Your education is fully funded from now through college. Any school you want to attend, any program you want to join, any dream you want to chase. You'll never have to worry about membership fees or supplies or anything else ever again. The girls stared at him, not quite understanding, but Sophia started crying and Isabella hugged her grandmother tightly. Daniel stood back up. And Rosa, I'm hiring you as the director of the foundation if you'll accept. The salary is $150,000 a year. Your job will be to help us find other caregivers like you, people who've given everything and need support. Daniel didn't tell Rebecca what he was planning. Over the next 2 weeks, he made excuses for leaving the house. Business meetings that ran late, dinner with potential investors, site visits to check on company projects. She didn't question it much. She was too busy planning their next charity gala, too caught up in her social calendar to pay attention to where he went. The truth was simpler and more meaningful than any business meeting. Daniel was visiting Rosa. The first time he showed up at her apartment door was on a Tuesday evening. He'd timed it carefully, knowing she'd be home with the girls before her shift started. When Rosa opened the door and saw him standing there, her hand flew to her mouth. Danny, what are you doing here? I wanted to see you. Really see you this time. Can I come in? Rosa looked embarrassed, glancing back at the small apartment behind her. It's not much. I wish I'd known you were coming. I would have cleaned up. Rosa, please. I don't care about that. She let him in, and Daniel tried not to show any reaction to what he saw. The apartment was tiny, smaller than his walk-in closet at home. The furniture was old and mismatched, clearly collected from thrift stores and curbsides over the years. That duct-tape table from the photos sat against one wall. A lumpy couch with a folded blanket and pillow occupied another wall. That's where Rosa slept, but the place was spotlessly clean. There were flowers in a jar on the table, probably picked from a park. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator. The small space smelled like something good cooking on the stove. 2 little girls peeked out from the bedroom doorway, curious about the visitor. They had Rosa's kind eyes and their mother's beautiful smile. "Girls, come meet someone," Rosa said, her voice warm despite her obvious discomfort with the situation. "This is Daniel. I used to take care of him when he was little, just like I take care of you now." Isabella and Sophia came forward shyly. They were 8 years old, Tom's report had said. But they seemed younger somehow. Maybe it was the way they stood close to Rosa, seeking her protection. Or maybe it was the wariness in their eyes, the look of children who'd learned too young that life could be hard and people could leave. "Hi," Daniel said, kneeling down so he was at their eye level. "Your grandmother has told you about me? She says you were very smart and very kind," Sophia said softly. "She says you used to help her cook even when you didn't have to." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He'd forgotten that. The memories came flooding back now. Standing on a stool in the kitchen, helping Rosa make tamales for Christmas. She'd been so patient, showing him how to spread the masa, how to fold the corn husks just right. "Your grandmother taught me everything important," he said. "She's the best teacher I ever had." Isabella smiled at that, losing some of her shyness. "She helps us with homework every night, even when she's really tired." They talked for a while and Daniel watched Rosa with the girls. She was the same as he remembered, patient and gentle and fully present. When Sophia couldn't remember a spelling word, Rosa didn't get frustrated. She made up a silly song to help her remember it. When Isabella was worried about a math test, Rosa sat with her and worked through practice problems until she felt confident. This was what love looked like, Daniel realized. Not the expensive gifts his parents had given him. Not the prestigious schools or the trust fund. Love was Rosa making sure 2 little girls felt safe and supported. Even though she was exhausted, even though she was scared about money, even though life had been incredibly unfair to her. "I have to get ready for work soon," Rosa said eventually, glancing at the clock. "Mrs. Chen next door will watch the girls. She's very kind." "What if you didn't have to go to work tonight?" Daniel asked. Rosa smiled sadly. "That would be nice. But bills don't pay themselves." Daniel wanted to tell her right then. He wanted to explain his plan, to promise that everything would be better soon. But something held him back. He needed to do this right. He needed to understand her life fully before he tried to change it. "Can I come back and visit again?" he asked instead. "Of course. The girls would love that." "I would love that." Rosa hugged him goodbye, and Daniel felt how thin she was, how fragile. This woman who had seemed so strong and capable when he was young was now elderly and struggling. Time had caught up with her and life had been cruel. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel came back 5 more times. He brought groceries, always casual about it, saying he'd bought too much or his assistant had ordered the wrong things. Rosa tried to refuse at first, but the girls' excited faces when they saw fresh fruit and good meat made her accept. He learned their routines. How Isabella loved science and dreamed of being a doctor someday. How Sophia was artistic, drawing pictures constantly on whatever paper she could find. How both girls missed their mother desperately, but rarely talked about their father, the man who'd abandoned them. He learned about Rosa's struggles. The landlord who kept promising to fix things but never did. The neighbor upstairs who played loud music all night. The fear Rosa felt every time the girls walked to the bus stop, worried about the drug dealers on the corner. The way she had to choose sometimes between buying medicine for her arthritis or new shoes for the girls. One evening he arrived to find Isabella crying. She'd wanted to join the after-school science club, but there was a $50 membership fee. $50. Daniel probably spent more than that on coffee in a week. But for Rosa, it was impossible. "It's okay, baby," Rosa was saying, stroking Isabella's hair. "We'll find other ways for you to learn science. We can go to the library. They have wonderful books." "But the club goes on field trips," Isabella sobbed, "to the Natural History Museum and the Science Center. All my friends are joining." Daniel's heart broke. He excused himself to use the bathroom and pulled out his phone. He sent a quick text to his assistant with instructions. The next day, Isabella's school received an anonymous donation to cover science club fees for students who couldn't afford them. Isabella came home ecstatic, hugging Rosa and jumping around the small apartment. Daniel watched Rosa's face when the girls told her the news. She was happy for them, genuinely delighted. But there was something else, too. A sadness, maybe, or shame. Rosa had dedicated her life to taking care of children, and now she couldn't afford to give her own grandchildren the opportunities they deserved. During another visit, Daniel saw the soccer ball Sophia played with. It was so deflated it barely bounced. "I love soccer," she told him, kicking it gently against the wall. "But my coach says I need real cleats to join the team. These shoes don't work right." She showed him her sneakers, generic ones from a discount store falling apart at the seams. Daniel remembered his own childhood. He'd played soccer too, with top-of-the-line equipment and professional coaches. He'd had everything. These girls had nothing but a grandmother who loved them and a dream of something better. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep again. He lay in his massive bed in his massive house, thinking about Rosa sleeping on that lumpy couch, thinking about two bright, sweet girls living in a dangerous neighborhood, unable to join clubs or play sports because of money, thinking about how wrong it all was. Rebecca rolled over, still mostly asleep. "Stop moving around," she mumbled. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said, "What? Do you ever think about people who have less than we do?" Rebecca sighed, more awake now and annoyed. "It's 3 a.m, Daniel. I'm serious. We have so much. More than we could ever spend. And there are people struggling every day just to survive. That's life. Some people work hard and succeed. Others don't. Rosa worked hard her entire life. She took care of other people's children for 50 years. And now she's 73 and living in poverty. Then she made bad choices. Maybe she should have gotten a better job. Or saved more money." Daniel turned to look at his wife in the darkness. She had a better job. "She worked for my family. And you know what they paid her? Not much, just enough to get by. And when they were done with her, they gave her 2 weeks severance and a card. Your parents don't owe her anything beyond what they paid her, don't they? She raised their son. She gave me love and attention they never had time for. She shaped who I am. Doesn't that count for something?" Rebecca sat up, turning on the bedside lamp. "Daniel, what is this really about? You've been obsessed with this woman for weeks. You're never home. You're distracted all the time. What's going on?" "I'm trying to figure out what kind of person I want to be. You're a successful businessman. You're wealthy and respected. What else is there?" "Everything else. All the things Rosa taught me about kindness and compassion and taking care of people who need help." Rebecca laughed, not meanly but like she thought he was being naive. "You can't save everyone, Daniel. The world doesn't work that way. Maybe not everyone. But I can save Rosa. I can help those little girls have the childhood they deserve. By giving them money. That's not going to fix their problems, it's a start." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know what I think? I think you're having some kind of midlife crisis. You're almost 40, and you're suddenly questioning everything because some old woman made you feel guilty." "She didn't make me feel guilty. I am guilty. We all are. Everyone who has so much while others have nothing. That's ridiculous. We earned what we have, did we? I inherited money from my parents. They made their fortune in real estate, buying up properties and raising rents. You inherited money from your family too. Neither of us worked our way up from poverty. We were born on third base and act like we hit a triple." Rebecca's face hardened. "I don't like what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. We're lucky, Rebecca. We were born into privilege, and that comes with responsibility." "Responsibility to what? To throw away our money on every sob story that comes along?" Daniel got out of bed. He couldn't lie there anymore, couldn't look at her. Rosa isn't a sob story. She's family, and those girls deserve better than they have. "So what are you going to do? Adopt them? Bring them to live here?" The sarcasm in her voice made Daniel turn around. "Would that be so terrible?" Rebecca's eyes widened. "You're not serious. Why not? We have plenty of room. The girls need stability and opportunities. We could provide that. Daniel, they're not puppies. You can't just bring home stray children because you feel bad for them. They're not strays. They're Rosa's grandchildren. They're good kids who've been dealt a bad hand, and they're not our problem." That was the moment Daniel knew for certain. His marriage was over. Maybe it had been over for a while and he just hadn't wanted to see it. But this was the final confirmation. He and Rebecca didn't share the same values, didn't see the world the same way. She looked at Rosa and the twins and saw inconvenience. He looked at them and saw family. "You're right," Daniel said quietly. "They're not our problem. They're my responsibility. And I'm going to help them whether you approve or not." Rebecca's face flushed with anger. "I'm your wife. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It's supposed to. But lately I'm not sure what it means to you." She opened her mouth to respond, but Daniel walked out. He went down to his study and sat in the darkness, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. His business success, his wealth, his marriage to a woman he'd thought was perfect. All of it felt hollow now. What mattered was Rosa singing Spanish songs while cooking dinner, Isabella's dream of becoming a doctor, Sophia's artwork taped to a refrigerator, two little girls who'd lost their mother and been abandoned by their father, still managing to smile and hope and dream because their grandmother loved them fiercely. Daniel pulled out his phone and looked at the notes he'd been making. His plan was ready. He'd been working on it quietly for 2 weeks, setting everything in motion. Now it was time to put it into action. But he needed to do one more thing first. He needed to show Rebecca and his parents and everyone else who'd forgotten Rosa exactly what she meant. He needed to make a statement that couldn't be ignored, and he knew exactly how to do it. Daniel couldn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Rebecca slept peacefully beside him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rosa's face, the way it had lit up when she recognized him, the way it had crumbled when Rebecca dismissed her, the tired lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. He kept thinking about what she'd said. She worked at a grocery store, part-time. Rosa had to be in her 70s by now. She should be retired, relaxing, enjoying her grandchildren if she had any. Instead, she was working at a grocery store just to get by. Around 3 in the morning, Daniel gave up on sleep. He went down to his office and sat at his desk, staring at the piece of paper where he'd written Rosa's address. Downtown Los Angeles. He knew that area. It wasn't safe. The apartments were old and cheap, the kind of place people lived when they had no other choice. How had this happened? Rosa had worked for his family for 15 years. She'd been paid well, or at least he'd always assumed she had been. Had his parents not given her any retirement money? Had they not helped her when she left? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Not just at his parents, but at himself. He'd been 17 when Rosa left, old enough to ask questions, old enough to stay in touch. But he hadn't. He'd been too wrapped up in his own life, his own problems, his own future. He'd let her slip away without a second thought. First thing Monday morning, Daniel made a phone call. He had a friend who worked as a private investigator, someone he'd used occasionally for business purposes, checking out potential partners and investors. This time, the job was personal. "I need you to find out everything you can about someone," Daniel said. "Her name is Rosa Martinez. I have her current address. I want to know where she's been, what she's been doing, how she's living. Everything." His friend asked a few questions, promised discretion, and said he'd have a report within a week. Daniel thanked him and hung up, feeling both anxious and guilty. Was this invasive? Maybe, but he needed to know. He needed to understand what Rosa's life had been like after she left his family. The week crawled by. Rebecca noticed he was distracted, but she didn't ask why. Things had been cold between them since the incident at the door. She'd tried to bring it up once, saying he'd embarrassed her in front of the neighbors. But Daniel had walked away from the conversation. He wasn't ready to deal with her yet. On Friday afternoon, his investigator called. "I've got your report. Do you want me to email it or deliver it in person?" "In person," Daniel said immediately. "Can you come to my office?" An hour later, they sat in Daniel's private office at his tech company headquarters. His investigator, Tom, slid a folder across the desk. It was thick, much thicker than Daniel had expected. "I'll be honest with you," Tom said. "This one got to me. I've been doing this job for 20 years, and usually I just find facts, write them up, move on. But this woman, your Rosa, she's had a rough go of it." Daniel opened the folder with shaking hands. The first page was a summary, but he flipped past it to the details. He needed to see everything. Rosa had continued working as a nanny after leaving Daniel's family. She'd worked for 3 different families over the next 20 years, always getting good references, always being described as loving and dedicated. She'd saved money carefully, putting away a little from each paycheck. She'd never married, had no children of her own. Daniel remembered her once telling him she'd never found the right person, that she'd poured all her love into the children she cared for instead. When Rosa turned 65, she'd retired. She had some savings, Social Security, and a small pension from her years of work. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a modest apartment and simple life. She'd been content, according to neighbors Tom had interviewed. She'd volunteered at a local church, helped other elderly people in her building, spent time in the park. Then 2 years ago, everything fell apart. Daniel read the next section twice because he couldn't believe it the first time. Rosa had a daughter. Her name was Patricia, and Rosa had raised her as a single mother while working full-time. Patricia had grown up, gotten married, had 2 children of her own, twin girls, 8 years old now. Their names were Isabella and Sophia. 2 years ago, Patricia had been diagnosed with cancer. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The prognosis was bad from the start, but Patricia fought hard. She went through chemotherapy, radiation, tried experimental treatments, and Rosa, who'd finally been able to rest after a lifetime of work, spent every penny she had on her daughter's medical bills. The insurance covered some of it, but not enough. Never enough. The experimental treatments weren't covered at all. Rosa emptied her retirement savings. She borrowed money from friends. She went back to work, taking any job she could find that would hire a woman in her 70s. Patricia died 6 months after her diagnosis. She left behind her 2 daughters and a husband who couldn't cope with his grief. 3 months after Patricia's funeral, her husband left, just packed his bags one day and disappeared. No one had heard from him since. He'd abandoned his own children. So Rosa, at 73 years old, became the legal guardian of 2 8-year-old girls. And she did it with no savings, no retirement fund, and a part-time job at a grocery store that paid minimum wage. Daniel had to stop reading. He put the folder down and pressed his hands against his eyes, trying not to cry. Tom sat quietly on the other side of the desk, letting him process. "There's more," Tom said gently after a few minutes. Daniel picked up the folder again. There were photographs now. Tom had done surveillance not to be creepy, but to document Rosa's daily life. The pictures told a story that broke Daniel's heart. Rosa's apartment was in a rundown building in a bad neighborhood. 1 bedroom, according to the landlord Tom had spoken to. Rosa slept on a couch in the living room so the twins could have the bedroom. The building had problems. Broken locks, peeling paint, neighbors who fought loudly at all hours. It wasn't safe for 2 little girls, but it was all Rosa could afford. There were photos of Rosa at work, wearing a grocery store vest, stocking shelves, and running a cash register. Her shift started at 6 in the evening and ended at midnight. She'd arranged it that way so she could be home with the girls after school. A neighbor watched them during Rosa's shift, a kindness that Tom noted Rosa repaid by cooking meals for the neighbor's family whenever she could. There were photos of the twins. Beautiful little girls with their grandmother's kind eyes. They wore clothes that were clean but obviously secondhand, probably from thrift stores. They carried backpacks that were patched and worn. But they were smiling in most of the pictures, holding Rosa's hands as they walked to the bus stop, helping her carry groceries home. Tom had included school records, too. Both girls were good students, despite everything they'd been through. Isabella wanted to join the science club but couldn't because of the membership fee. Sophia loved art but had to use the cheapest supplies. Their teachers noted they were bright, eager to learn, but sometimes came to school tired because of the noise in their apartment building. One photo in particular made Daniel's chest tighten. It showed Rosa and the twins at a kitchen table. The table was old, held together with duct tape. They were doing homework together by the light of a single lamp. Rosa was helping one girl with math while the other practiced writing. Despite the poverty surrounding them, despite how hard everything must be, Rosa was smiling. She was doing what she'd always done, taking care of children, making sure they felt loved, helping them learn and grow. The last page of the report was a financial summary. Tom had somehow gotten hold of Rosa's bank statements, probably not entirely legally, but Daniel didn't care. The numbers were stark. Rosa made about $1,000 a month from her job and got another $1,000 from Social Security. Their rent was $800. That left $1,200 for everything else: food, utilities, clothes, school supplies, medical care, everything 2 growing girls needed. Rosa was barely surviving. She was one emergency away from complete disaster: a car breakdown, a medical bill, an unexpected expense of any kind, and she'd be ruined. And yet she'd come to see Daniel not to ask for help, but just to see that he was doing well. Just to tell him she was proud of him. Daniel closed the folder and looked at Tom. "Thank you for this. Send me your bill." "Already waived it," Tom said. "Like I said, this one got to me. That woman is a hero. If you're planning to help her, and I hope you are, then consider this my contribution." After Tom left, Daniel sat in his office for a long time. He thought about his own childhood, growing up in a mansion with every advantage. Private schools, tutors, expensive clothes, vacations to Europe. His parents had given him everything money could buy. But Rosa had given him something more valuable. She'd given him love, attention, guidance. She'd made him feel safe and valued. She'd taught him kindness and compassion. And what had he given her in return? Nothing. He'd let her go without a word. He'd never checked on her, never sent a card, never once thought to make sure she was okay. But he could change that now. Daniel pulled out his phone and made a call to his accountant. Then he called his real estate agent. Then his lawyer. By the time he left the office that night, he had a plan. It wasn't enough, could never be enough to make up for years of neglect, but it was a start. He drove to Rosa's neighborhood that evening. He'd never been to this part of the city before, not really. He drove past boarded-up buildings and groups of men standing on corners. The apartment building where Rosa lived was 6 stories of peeling paint and broken windows. The front door didn't lock properly. The hallway smelled like mildew and old garbage. Daniel didn't go up. He wasn't ready yet, didn't trust himself not to break down. But he sat in his car across the street and watched. Around 7, he saw them. Rosa and the twins coming back from somewhere. The girls were laughing about something, skipping beside their grandmother. Rosa held a shopping bag in one hand and each girl's hand in the other. She was smiling despite the long day she must have had. They disappeared into the building and Daniel sat there for another hour, thinking. Inside that building, in a tiny apartment, Rosa was probably making dinner with whatever she could afford. The girls were probably doing homework at that duct-tape table. Later, Rosa would tuck them into bed in the only bedroom, then go to work her evening shift at the grocery store. She'd come home around midnight, exhausted, and sleep for a few hours on the couch before starting all over again. She was 73 years old. She should be resting. She'd earned that right. Daniel started his car and drove home. Rebecca was waiting in the living room, drinking wine and scrolling through her phone. "Where have you been?" she asked without looking up. "Just driving around, thinking." "About that woman?" "Daniel, you need to let this go. It happened a week ago." He looked at his wife, at her perfectly styled hair and designer clothes, at the glass of wine that probably cost more than Rosa made in a day. "Her name is Rosa, and no, I'm not letting it go." Rebecca finally looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm going to help her. She raised me and she needs help." "Fine, write her a check if it'll make you feel better. Just don't make it too much. We don't want her becoming dependent." Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest. "Dependent?" "Rebecca, she's raising 2 children on minimum wage and Social Security. She's not dependent. She's desperate. That's not our problem." "Yes," Daniel said quietly. "It is." Daniel stood in the entrance of his Beverly Hills mansion, staring at his phone when he heard his wife's voice echo through the marble hallway. It wasn't her usual tone. This was the voice she used when she was angry. The one that made the housekeepers walk a little faster and keep their heads down. "Excuse me? Did you not hear me? I said the service entrance is around the back." He looked up from his phone and saw his wife Rebecca standing near the front door, her arms crossed, her designer heels clicking impatiently against the floor. She was blocking someone from entering. Daniel couldn't see who it was at first. He walked closer. "Ma'am, I'm not here for work," a gentle voice said. "I just wanted to see if Daniel was home. I saw his picture in a magazine last month and I thought maybe